All right. How's it going, everyone? This is Kelvin. I'm talking to Shane McCarthy of Wayfarer. How are you doing, Shane?
I'm doing pretty well, man. Thanks for talking to me on a Wednesday morning.
Yeah,
Thursday,
no
whatever it
problem.
is.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm just a big fan of the band. I've been following the band ever since the first album.
Oh,
Um, yeah, this has been. I mean, it didn't seem too long ago, but I've been a big fan of the band. Even before the kind of all the worldwide recognition you guys been getting. I'm
yeah.
out here in Arizona, so I mean, you guys are based in Colorado, so being in the Four Corners area, I always, thought it was sick that you know, a band from this Four Corners area was like, kind of making a name for itself. Um, but yeah, as far as I guess if people aren't too familiar with you or Wayfarer, can you just kind of like talk about your role in the band and kind of like how Wayfarer started?
Sure. Yeah, and first off, I definitely want to say thanks for supporting us through this whole time. I mean, kind of as you mentioned, definitely a lot of people, were not aware of the band as far back as that first record, which is coming up on 10 years, I guess, this next year. So that's awesome, man. Yeah, I feel like the first record and even really the second one, didn't get out too much, and it's funny, especially like when we go to Europe now, since we moved labels with starting with World's Blood and Romance, we're on Profound Lore, and then now over there we're working with Century Media. People like it seems like half the people we meet over there think World's Blood was like the first album. They're like, "Oh yeah, your first one, your second one." We're like, "Oh no, we have four albums, so we're about to put out the fifth." So no, I appreciate you being around from the start. That's awesome. Because yeah, we've been a band for, depending on how you look at it, like 11 or 12 years, somewhere around there. It was started by myself and the other founding guitar player who left the band in like 2016. But we were even working on stuff as far back as high school in the mid 2000s, and then didn't really get it in any firm direction until Wayfair started in 2011 or 12. Um, but yeah, I play guitar and do vocals in the band, and we um, have kind of over time found ourselves just being like a band that wants to represent the region where we're from, being the American West, like you kind of mentioned, the Four Corners area, and especially where we are kind of the more, Rocky Mountain side of things. I mean, the interesting thing about Colorado to me is that it is this like um, kind of meeting of the mountains and the plains. Which I know, like down in Arizona, you kind of have like the mountains and the desert, because in the northern state or in the northern part of the state, you still have a bit of the Rockies, like in Flagstaff and whatnot. Um, but yeah, we've from the start always kind of wanted to represent the place. Like in the early days of the first record, it was more purely based around kind of the nature aspect of it. And as it grew on, we kind of just grew more and more into the idea of fleshing out kind of the idea and the mythology of the American West using the band. And a lot of influence from old Denver Sound stuff, 16 Horsepower, Woven Hand, Slim Cessna's Auto Club, bands like that we were always into. And eventually that influence kind of started creeping in, and we just decided to embrace it and create some kind of, you know, uh, a sound that comes from that same place, but does it in a more, extreme metal kind of vein. And that's where we've been fleshing out the last few albums. And American Gothic is definitely, I think, the furthest ebb so far, that we've kind of fleshed that out, and it feels like a big kind of statement record for us. So we're stoked to get it out there.
Yeah, everyone should check out the new album. Comes out October 27th, so a
We'll
little
see.
over a week away. This should be, this should be out before. So, yeah, everyone check that out. Yeah, going back to the first record, this is kind of where I picked up on the band, and yeah, you're right. I do agree. Yeah, the atmospheric, like, um, I guess more like Cascadian. I mean, that's kind of what I get when I first heard it, like sort of like Agalloch or some of those American like folk inspired black metal bands. And yeah, even on the second record too. Um, but yeah, I to this day I still go back to the first record. I'm just yeah, I think I just kind of connected with it at a a time I was just like going through like school and just trying to like I think I listened to this a lot while I was studying in school, so kind of holds a good place for me. I was able to find the record too, like
Oh, awesome. Yeah, there's not
yeah.
not many of those out there.
Yeah, I'm still trying to look for this one. Like I missed out on the initial like vinyl release, but I'm hoping that you guys can I understand like there's like some legal not legal label issues that prevent you guys from releasing it, but I'm hoping you guys put that out as a repress soon.
Yeah, we'd love to get it back out there at some point. Yeah, it's just owned by the old label Prosthetic, and potentially they may put it out at some point. But ideally, we would love to be able to put it out ourselves sometime. We'll see how all that goes. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, like you don't see many of those records. So again, I appreciate you being around from the start.
Yeah, no, and I was always intrigued by the imagery too, like on Old Souls, yeah, like the like almost like a dream catcher like symbol on the cover, and then World's Blood. I believe this is a photo, like an old photo.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
Edward Curtis photo.
yeah, I was always like intrigued by the just the whole imagery of like the American West, and yeah, I even have it back here. I'm such a fan of this. Um, but yeah, you mentioned like you were slowly trying to bring in your influences and kind of represent the area that you're from. Um, was there like you mentioned some of the bands, but like was there a specific like um I guess like a moment or like when you guys realized like you want to kind of shift your sound and your presentation?
Um, Not exactly. Because I think what happened is, we started the band when we were pretty young, and it was just kind of intending to be a metal band, and honestly, not even really paying attention much to the other like American black metal, folk metal sort of bands, but drawing a lot of influence from like Enslaved and Primordial and Opeth, Moon Sorrow, bands like that at the beginning. And at that same time, we were really into, especially I was really into a lot of that again, especially the Denver bands, like the David Eugene Edwards bands and the Munley and Slim Cessna bands. But I think starting the band, we were like, okay, we're working on making a metal band. We want to focus on that aspect of it, so we didn't really consider any of the other stuff we were into. And then it just kind of crept in subconsciously because that was something that we're interested in and listen to a lot. And I think somewhere around, the process of Old Souls, we're realizing that it was kind of like taking more of that, instead of the kind of big, grandiose, mountainy, foresty stuff that could bring to mind something like the bands from the Northwest. It was a little bit more your dusty, plainsy, even kind of deserty sound that drew more from that influence, and that was just kind of happening naturally. So I think somewhere through making that album and finishing it, we were kind of just intrigued by that and decided to be go in headlong. And so World's Blood is definitely the first album where we're like, we're making this album sound like the American West, be about the American West, have imagery from it, like everything about it, is going to be in that path. And from that point forward, the decision was always like, we want to do that, but it would be so easy to do it in a kind of gimmicky way, like it's still to this day, when people just hear the description of the band, it's like, oh, Western black metal or something. They're like, oh, that sounds like funny, or like it wouldn't work, or that it would be kind of like cheesy and not played for last, but you know what I mean, like kind of like some of your European folk metal bands really like play up the costuming and the like instrumentation to make it more of like a um I don't know, a theatrical, less taken less seriously sort of thing. And I think that would be kind of the low hanging fruit route that could be taken with bringing in the Western elements. So, from our standpoint, the most important thing has always been that we do it in a very genuine way and do it in a way that is like um, fully thought out. Like we want the metal parts to be coming from the same place as the less heavy folk driven Americana driven parts, and vice versa. So it's not like it switches back and forth from just having like black metal, black metal, black metal, and then like here's a twangy country riff thrown in. It's like even the metal riffs have the same influence of that Americana kind of twangy folk song stuff, and vice versa. We want it all to be coming from the same place. So yeah, I think it was Old Souls that we caught onto it, and then decided that we were gonna dive in headlong with World's Blood, and since then we've just been fleshing it out more and more, and then like kind of pointing it in a different direction, album to album. Um, because Romance was still very much an American West album, but it was kind of more pointed in the direction of like deconstructing the myth of the West in general, and like drawing a lot from film. And then American Gothic kind of moves the timetable forward a little bit to the post turn of the century, kind of like the westward expansion and all of the kind of violent seizing colonization was basically complete by that point. And then you have like this nation being fully established, and then these new kind of corporate powers taking hold with the railroad and the oil barons and all of those kind of interests. So that's kind of where that album is. That was a long-winded way to answer your question, but um,
Yeah.
yeah, we've
No,
been on
no,
that
that's
path
cool.
since then.
Yeah. No, I'm just yeah, I really dig the natural progression and yeah, this album, it didn't even seem that long ago. I just remember like buying it at the record store and like listening to it and like the first just the first song, like the galloping, like almost like a horse riff, like a horse galloping riff. I always like found that like as just like a really cool way to start the album and kind of let everyone know that it's that's what the album's going to be about. And then yeah, this is like probably one of the most like accomplished albums I've heard and one of my favorite albums from the year it came out, 2020. And you mentioned like the subject matter. I know with this one being more about like Western expansion and um, uh, like the railroad. You got there's like images of the railroad system, um, and the images or the subject matter on this upcoming album, American Gothic. Um, what was it just kind of like you researching like the progression of like history, or was there like just anything like personal that you wanted that you've gone through and grown up in Colorado that you want to incorporate?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things for sure. We're definitely all into history. A couple of the guys, Isaac and James, actually have history degrees in the band. And then for myself, it's just an area of my interest in reading and whatnot. And also, we take a lot of influence from film. I think Romance of the Violence, again, was kind of about the idea of the American West and how it's been mythologized, and how it has been represented, like, through even European countries making Western films like the Italian ones or something. How it's just kind of grown into this whole idea that is, definitely a romanticism of what it actually maybe was. And I think for this album, we wanted to hone in more specifically on the idea of the nation as a whole, since again it had kind of like timetable wise been more fully established, for better or for worse by that point. And that kind of, opens up a new chapter in history that's like just as interesting in different ways. It's less the like lawless frontier, Wild West that comes to mind, and more the like um, becoming more of a system, more of a true nation. And then, you kind of get your powers that take hold, and your your especially powers of greed that take hold. And I think so we focused in on some films, American made films from the
Yeah.
late 60s and early 70s that are more kind of darker, sadder sort of visions of things like that. And that was a lot of inspiration for this one.
Yeah. Which kind of films would you say were the most influential, or ones that people should definitely check out that would complement the album, the
Yeah,
American Gothic album?
I'd say a lot of it is from that kind of new Hollywood era, the like late 60s, early 70s. There's McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which is the Robert Altman film that's just actually set in the Northwest. But I think just looking through, obviously we're big nerds as far as it comes to movies, and looking through the history of film, and especially looking at the westerns, I think the Italian westerns really kind of blew the lid off what they were and what they could be, instead of being more the black and white morality tales, John Wayne sort of stuff of the 50s and early 60s. All of a sudden you had these like grittier, more violent, more grandiose visions coming from Europe. So then the US, I think, kind of responded by making them a bit more pensive and bleak and deconstructive. But that was kind of in the auteur filmmaking era, so it was less grandiose kind of action violence and more kind of personal character sort of stuff. And McCabe and Mrs. Miller is a great example of like a movie that's like kind of funny and like whimsical at times in its own way, but at its core, it's like a pretty dark, sad story about a couple entrepreneurs in a new kind of settlement town in the Northwest, trying to build their own life, and eventually, you know, um, you have these kind of big money big money people who come to town and see that they're able to do that, and they basically forcibly take it from them. And that's a great one. Heaven's Gate, which was a movie that was had a very tumultuous history and basically bankrupted its studio at the time, but was reconstructed later on to its full cut. But that's a great movie. Chris Christopherson, Christopher Walken, and it's about the Johnson County War in Wyoming, and at close to the turn of the century, late 1800s. Um, which is again kind of a class struggle sort of thing. It's a bunch of poor immigrants trying to build a life for themselves, and there's kind of accusations of cattle thieving by the big kind of corporate Wyoming Stock Grower Association, and this is, albeit loosely, but based on actual historical events, that did start basically a smaller scale class war in Wyoming, where mercenaries were sent in to like kill these people at the time, and that's actually one of the tracks on the album is um, based directly on that historical time period. So those are two that definitely come to mind, and then more contemporary stuff like There Will Be Blood ties in, because there's I think the oil industry is a big benchmark of kind of industrialization and like true, kind of the birth of like your big corporate powers really taking hold in the US, would be like the railroad and the oil industry. And There Will Be Blood is such a great, modern classic, kind of depicting how grim that really is for all sides. So those are three that come to mind for sure.
Yeah, there's a new one coming out. I think it comes out this week with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Hmm.
Martin Scorsese
Hmm.
directed the Killers of the Flower Moon, I think.
Yeah, comes out
I think I got
tomorrow, I
that title
believe.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that one
yeah.
looks interesting. I kind of just heard a little quick synopsis. I didn't want to read the whole like
Hmm.
synopsis, but yeah, it definitely kind of ties in with what you're describing with the oil and greed, and like from what I understand, it's about um like oil on the Osage like reservation in Oklahoma, and how these like people like kind of come in and like are trying to like get a hold of that oil and manipulating like the people on that tribe. And yeah, it looks cool. I definitely want to check it out, but I don't think it's out yet, but I'm definitely going to check it out.
Yeah, I think that comes out tomorrow. I'm very excited about that as well because that's a a director I love and great cast. And yeah, like that's it's actually kind of funny like that it's coming out 1 week before the album comes out because as soon as we kind of saw the first bits of footage or whatever from the movie, it was like, wow, this is very much kind of the world in which this album is. So it's interesting that they're coming out at the same time, in two separate worlds. But yeah, very very intrigued about that because yeah, I mean, that that movie and a lot of these films, and then like the concepts behind our songs. We get asked a lot in interviews if anything we're writing about is like meant to be metaphorical for things happening today. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, we don't set out to draw a clear parallel between whatever historical event and something today, like in any kind of heavy-handed way. Because really we like to have, I think music is all about interpretation. It's all about what it means to the listener, what it brings to mind for the listener. But at the same time, it's like impossible not to draw parallels. Like you have, yeah, Killers of the Flower Moon, which, like you said, is like the Osage people kind of fighting for or fighting against these powers coming in trying to exploit them. And you look at like the Keystone Pipeline and things like that that are still happening right now today. And it's like these issues don't really change like as much as it would be that as it's purported that they do, and everything's like advanced and fixed and figured out, and it's just like still the same core human issues and human greed and struggles and subjugation. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
that's interesting what seeing things that are about history, and then you're like, this is just as much about today as it is about 100 years ago.
Yeah. In my area, I'm in northern Arizona on the Navajo reservation. I guess one of the biggest things that happened to around here was the uranium mining. I guess like during the like World War I, World War II, there was like
Mhm.
uranium
Yeah.
that was found on the land, and they actually um, like they employed like people from the tribe to like go in there like unmasked, unprotected, not wearing any kind of um safety equipment, and the Navajo people were mining the uranium for I want to say like 50 years from like the 30s to like the 70s, and then like yeah, all that was just to help with the Cold War and try to arm the US against the
Yeah.
yeah, just during that time. And then as a result, the people, like a lot of people ended up with like really bad like lung cancer, and um even like the uranium leaking into the water supply, causing like lots of like major health problems during that time. But yeah, that's one of the biggest things that kind of happened around here. And luckily all that stuff is kind of stopped. They put a stop to that. But I think every now and then there's some congressman that tries to kind of renegotiate with the tribal president to kind of get the um, uranium mining going again. But luckily it hasn't um, taken place yet. But yeah, that's another example of that.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, you would fucking hope not, but yeah, I mean, kind of as you're saying, it's just like there's still today, there's always people still trying to do the same shit. And you're talking about the uranium mining and how there's probably been a lot of lasting effects, I would imagine, yeah, among your community because yeah, there's proven scientific after effects that this will have on human bodies. And no, that's yeah, it's there's too
yeah.
many of these types of stories, out there. And yeah, like you mentioned with the congressman still trying, it's like people don't seem to learn, or it maybe they learn and they just don't care, and they will still go back after it. That's
Mhm.
it's a wild
Yeah.
world.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, no, I definitely gotta like check out some of those films. I haven't really been watching a whole lot of like Western films. I know my dad was really into them. My dad paints. He paints a lot of like this kind of like like Western imagery and Native
Awesome.
American imagery. And yeah, we used to always grow up watching them. And I mean, the only one I could really think of off the top of my head, it doesn't really tie in with kind of what we're talking about, was this film called When the Legends Die.
Hmm.
Really cool story. It's just I think it came out like in the late 70s or early 80s. It it's about a like a little boy, like he's like a young Native American boy who gets taken from his land homeland to and goes to boarding school, and then kind of just gets assimilated. Like, he's kind of gets assimilated into like just the Western culture, and then he ends up becoming like a really good like rodeo athlete. Like he's like into like bareback riding, and just like, but then I think he kind of keeps like having that inner conflict with like, being a native person, or being a cowboy. And yeah, it's just a cool story. But yeah, it came out like I think in the like 80s, early 80s. But that was always one of my favorites that my dad would show us.
Cool. You said When the Legends Die.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
it's really
I'm
good.
gonna look that up. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not familiar. I'd love to watch that.
yeah. But yeah, well, so with this with the new album, American Gothic, like as far as the writing process, like I mean, this just, to me, it just came out like like a few, like not even like it feels like it didn't even feel like it came out like 3 years ago. But how soon after did you guys start writing American Gothic after their Romance with Violence?
It was definitely a while. I think for us, like typically, we put a lot into each album. We put a lot of time and energy and like really heavy focus on it. Um, so we kind of need some time. The way I always feel about it is like we kind of need the tour cycle, because the tour cycle after an album comes out, you get to like play the album live, and so often, you're working on writing and like the album's only finished writing like when it's being recorded, like the final touches are being added in the studio, so it's like it's really only finished right then when it's made. So it kind of needs some time to breathe and to live, and so like we like to take out and tour an album for a while so we can feel like we can really get it fully out of our system, because it's something that we've been working on. We just finished. So then it's like you take it out, you play it live several times, you let those songs like really breathe on stage. And then it kind of feels like, all right, it's been said, we can move forward. And with Romance coming out in 2020, that cycle was delayed by COVID. So it was over a year until we could actually really start touring on the record. Um, so honestly, we didn't like ideas kind of started to like form in little ways, just like concepts, like not even musical ideas, just kind of concepts for the album. But I don't think we started writing anything until I guess about last summer. So it was a good 2 years after Romance had been released, because it took until 2022 until we really got to tour. Um, we yeah, we did one tour to the West Coast, which I think we came through Sister Bar then, and then we did the kind of Midwest Texas run, where we also came through Sister Bar last December, and then went to Europe this spring. But I think it was somewhere around last summer that we kind of started, you know, getting ideas going and talking about what the album would be. We're very much like a work from the top down sort of band, where it's like from the beginning we talked about what the album was going to be, what it was going to feel like, what it was going to be about, what it was going to, kind of sound like and be presented like. So like we had the title from the jump. We had the idea of like kind of how we'd even want it to be presented visually, and then what it would be about and what it would sound like. We kind of had a lot of conversations about that around last summer, and then we dove into writing. And at this point, we do kind of a hybrid approach to writing, because we Isaac, our drummer, plays in Blood Incantation, so he's on the road a lot, and so this has just kind of happened naturally because of that, where we still like to get together and play together in the room, and let things kind of just jam things out and see what happens, because a lot of good stuff I think comes from the spontaneity of that. But anymore we kind of do a hybrid approach where we do some of that and we record what we do together, and then we will dissect it more kind of, one or two of us will get together and look at the tracks on like a demo file. And it's kind of nice that way because we can step away from it some and have a different perspective on it. Um, so I think there was a lot more of that on this record. And yeah, so I think we started the process kind of kicking things back and forth in the summer, and it really wasn't finished until right up until we went into the studio with Arthur in February, March of this year. And even then, we actually recorded everything, all the instruments, all the metal vocals, harsh vocals. And then we went on the European tour, which was about a month. And then, like 10 days or so after that, I went back up to Philadelphia to do the clean singing parts. And so those were the last parts to be written and kind of put in there. So it was a bit of a drawn out writing process just because we kind of had to, attack it at different times and then focus on like a tour or something. But it was basically from summer until it was finished in May in the studio of this year that we were working on this one.
Yeah, and then I don't have the album, but do you guys have any like guest like musicians or vocalists?
Yes, we have two little guest spots. There's a voiceover by Munley, who is like a Denver sound legend. He plays in Slim Sessa's Auto Club. He has several iterations of his own bands over the years. Currently, Munley and the Lupercalians. But my favorite of his projects ever was Munley and the Lee Lewis Harlots, which was from like the mid late 2000s. He's just like a really cool iconic figure in the kind of Denver, whatever it is, Gothic country scene. And he did a voiceover that's on the record. And then George Cessna, who is Slim Cessna's son, Slim Cessna of Slim Cessna's Auto Club. Um, he's like he's got a really cool thing going on with his music where it draws some from that Denver sound sort of stuff and draws some from more from like country music. But he kind of does it in a, I don't know, a very unique way. I think it's a blend of the types of country music that I like, as well as like a little bit of even like Iggy Pop kind of rock and roll infusion, and then a little bit of the kind of Denver sound Americana. His band is called Snakes, and he has some solo records as well. But he did guest vocals on a track, like just a guest section on a track as well. So those are the two guests on this one, and I'm really stoked that we had him on.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I can't wait to hear it. I hope the pre-order comes in a few days from now, but yeah, I really can't wait to hear it.
I think he
Um,
is. I think they should be shipping out because
okay.
the records have landed. Because even we have the U.S. label and the European label, and even the U.S. records still get pressed in the Czech Republic and sent here. But they have landed. Like we just got our copies in, so I think pre-orders should be going out any day now.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. And do you guys have any like upcoming tours or any upcoming live shows announced yet?
Just a couple. We're doing 3 shows with Baroness. They're doing this tour that actually has started now, um, where they're kind of doing a whole U.S. tour and they're bringing a bunch of different support bands. Like they'll have bands play just like 2 to 3 or 4 shows with them. So we're doing 3 shows with Baroness in Salt Lake, Denver, and Omaha. Um, Middle of November. Yeah, I think it's like the first one is on the 9th. And that's all that's announced for now, but we're working on a bunch of stuff. We're working on going back to Europe. We're working on a full US tour. And all of that stuff will happen in 2024. So we'll definitely be touring the record heavily. And I would hope and imagine that we do come back through Albuquerque because we love playing at Sister and it's always good people there. Is that the nearest place you said you're in northern Arizona?
Yeah, I'm like right on the border of like Arizona,
Mm.
New Mexico. Like I would say like maybe like I don't know, like half a mile from here will be the New Mexico border. But yeah, that's like the closest. If there's any kind of like live places, live shows I want to check out, it's either like Albuquerque or Flagstaff. I think a few times
Mhm.
there's been some bands I checked out in Flagstaff, and then there's like Gallup. You probably driven through there, like Gallup, New Mexico on the I-40. Um, there's like a lot of local shows, but yeah, it's mostly like Albuquerque. I think
Okay.
probably I'd say like, yeah, 90% of the if I want to check out a band like you guys would be like in Albuquerque.
Hmm. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, like I said, I imagine we'll come back through there because it's always been really good for us. Like the people there are red. Sister Bar is a great place to play. So I imagine we will, when we do the full US, that'll be on there. Yeah, we've never played in Flagstaff. I know my wife's band Dreadnought has played there, and I think had good shows there, but we've only ever done uh Phoenix or Tempe.
Yeah, Flagstaff's cool. I mean, honestly, there's like a lot of like just like fans of heavy music on the Navajo reservation. So like any kind of like band on a like you guys level would always like bring good amount of people.
Yeah,
Um
I that's actually a question that I wanted to ask you. Is I really appreciate what you do with the podcast, and I'm just curious what the metal scene is like living on the reservation. Like how much how into metal are the people on your reservation? Do you see a lot of like people playing and bands forming out of there? And shows and just kind of, yeah, what is metal on the reservation like in your experience?
yeah, I mean, I'm just like a fan, like kind of like just I guess just a supporter of the whole scene. It's I'd say it's pretty pretty thriving. Just I would say there's definitely like a lot of bands in like kind of like big area. Like there's like certain areas like where it's really concentrated, and then there's a lot of like cross pollination where bands like you know would play in like like a lead guitarist here would play bass in
Oh, I think I lost you.
Arizona. There's quite a few. I would say um the styles are different. Like there's not like a one specific like, black metal or death metal or um thrash metal. I think everyone kind of brings their own take, but yeah, I would say it's kind of like it's just like I guess the term res metal I guess is just kind of like a blanket term that kind of covers a lot of different bands who play different styles. But yeah, it's I would say since the coming out of the pandemic, I think it's been good. It's been thriving.
Good.
I'm on the Navajo reservation, which I feel like metal is kind of a little more accepted. There's more places to play and a lot more support, I think. I think it's different like other reservations. I think like on the Apache reservation or the Gila River reservation in Arizona, it's not as accepted. There are bands that play, but then a lot of them like don't get the support, or
Yeah.
they'll announce a show and then like the tribal council whatever will shut them down. Like
Wow.
stuff like that happens. But around here on the Navajo reservation, it's pretty accepted. Actually, Megadeth played here last month for the
Wow.
our Navajo Nation Fair.
Awesome.
There was like over 10,000 people there, so that was
Yeah.
really cool to see.
How'd the
And
show go?
it was amazing. I think it was they were able to get Megadeth. Um, they were doing a tour. They're doing like a 1 month like a US
Mhm.
tour, and they just played a show in Albuquerque, and then I think the Navajo tribe fair committee was able to um, get Megadeth to play out here one night. That was really really awesome, amazing. Like I've never seen so many people there. It was actually done in a rodeo ground, like
Oh,
the
cool.
rodeo
Yeah.
arena, like the whole like rodeo floor, the rodeo ground was like people, were standing, and then the whole like stadium area or the seated area was completely full. So that was really cool to see. So every now and then we get like a big I guess band like that. But I would say of all the places in my area, Gallup, New Mexico is probably the biggest. Um, I would say like the hot spot for most bands. That's where a lot of bands are based out of, and
Mm,
there's a venue there in the downtown part of Gallup, right across from the train station.
mm,
Um, so yeah, that place is probably like where I probably go the most to check out a lot of bands play. And yeah, like I said, there's just band like the whole reservation here is like, the whole part of like northern Arizona. So there's bands like in Flagstaff and Tuba City and Page, and then bands in Kayenta, Arizona, and Shiprock and Gallup and Window Rock. So it's just um, kind of like a big community, and
mm.
like I said, people kind of like help each other out. It's just a good. I'd say it's a good scene. It's like it's really inclusive, I think.
Good.
Um, but yeah, the yeah, every now and then we get a band that will play like Gallup, and then a lot of like the local bands will play support, and then like all the people will come out. It's usually a good turnout.
Cool. Do you get, I mean, obviously, having the Megadeth show, that's like big, big show, big deal shit. Do you get many like other metal bands coming through the reservation itself? Like in
Yeah,
from out of state?
yeah. There's a promoter here. He's a local promoter. He does this Rancid Savage production. I think he brought the band Havoc. You're familiar with Havoc in
Yeah, yeah,
Colorado?
very
Yeah,
familiar.
yeah,
Yeah.
Havoc. There, I think he brought him out like 10 years ago, and then I think Havoc is gonna come through again next month.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, there's only one. No, there's quite a bit of promoters. I would say only like a handful of promoters that put on like these shows like around here.
Mhm.
I wish I could do it. I don't promote shows. It'd be cool to try, but I just don't. I don't know. I don't know. I just like I work like Monday through Friday, and then
Sure.
yeah, I have like a I'm a 9 month old like little
Mhm.
boy. I kind of watch over, so I'm just kind of like spread thin as it is right now. But this is kind of like my way of promoting
Yeah, no, for
bands,
sure.
and like yeah, because like yeah, I think it's just a big part of like my own like I guess mental and like this is kind of like my own like way of like staying connected with
Yeah.
who I am and like what I'm into. And yeah, it started out talking with the I started out just talking with the local bands around here, and then
Hmm.
kind of like started reaching out to like kind of more like national bands. So it's fun. I mean, I'm trying to do it as much as possible, but like with the limited amount of time I have, like it's kind of tough. I haven't been able to do it as much as I want, but
Hmm.
yeah, I still enjoy it.
Awesome. No, I think it's awesome what you're doing. Like, I think it's a great podcast. Like you're a good interviewer, and then also, yeah, I just think, it seems to me from the outside perspective that there's been a rise in like, I don't know, in identity in terms of, throughout the metal scene in North America, where you look at like your Black Twilight Circle bands in Southern California. And like for example, we're working on a merch collaboration with this guy. His name is Brian, who I think who does some really cool art. He has his own, like he does a lot of like linoleum carvings and things like that. But he's like a Southern California. Um, I believe he's part Mexican and part. I'm not honestly sure which other, like he's part Mexican and part Native American. I'm not sure from which people he claims, but um, he's been doing just really cool art pieces for a ton of different bands, like from that I think are just kind of like representing different cultures of North America, and it just seems to be something um, that's coming to life more, and I think that's great because it's such a that's what makes like North America and the US such an interesting place is how many different cultures are here. And so the fact that still, most of the metal bands are just like American white guys is like, there's so many other perspectives to be brought to it. And like everybody brings something different to music, like regardless of who they are. And I don't know, that's just something I've appreciated seeing, especially, Wayfarer being so focused on the US and the American West conceptually. It's something we're always like grappling with, like in covering concepts like genocide by the country, by the United States. Um, it's a really obviously heavy topic to dive into, and for us, it's like something that's really important to us to make sure to never appropriate or like misrepresent, and like only speak from our perspective, because that's the only perspective we can honestly speak from. But trying to, yeah, I don't know, it's always just something we're kind of concerned about, like making sure we're not misconstruing or misrepresenting. And I appreciate, talking to somebody like you who is um, running a metal podcast on the Navajo reservation. And I don't know. I guess I was just kind of curious of your perspective on all of that. Like, I think Wayfarer, because again, we're so invested in the region we live in, which there are a lot of reservations in Colorado, and of course throughout the Four Corners area, like you mentioned. Um, that we've thought about trying to reach out and maybe like going and playing some of these places, that I think not enough people do, because it seems to be like, with people like you running a podcast and these bands popping up, it seems to be that there's plenty of people into metal on reservations, and that, I don't know, that's something we'd love to explore more. But I just want to make sure we do it right, and we're not overstepping, and that we're, that we would be welcomed, I guess, to do so.
Yeah, I would say you guys would be like welcomed big time, just because like I think black metal too is like really big. I guess
Yeah.
one of the this is a band, Mutilated Tyrant. They're a
Hmm.
Navajo band.
Cool.
They're actually not like they live like not, or they're based from a town called Ganado, Arizona, which is not far from here.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I mean your band style would definitely be welcomed. But yeah, like I said, there's just a different or there's just a lot of different styles and bands like Megadeth, and I think last year Queensryche played at the
Oh wow,
fair, and there's like a big turnout.
awesome.
um, I think it's just like, a lot of the people that are, I guess, one the generation before me that, grew up with Metallica and
Mhm.
Scorpions and Megadeth, like their kids are now like, starting bands like today. And so it's kind of like a almost like a second generation of people who, play and support this kind of music.
Awesome.
Um, but yeah, for sure. And then definitely, yeah, identity is a big thing too. I think a lot of the bands here do like, want to, a lot of the stuff, that they, as far as lyrics, sing about, or, about, or how they grew up, and, the, like their culture that they grew up with. And so um, yeah, it's really cool to see. And, just a fan, and I just kind of like go and support, them as much as possible.
Awesome. That's great.
Uh,
Yeah, I'd love you should if you ever have the time, send me a couple bands to check out. Um
yeah. Oh yeah, for
and,
sure. Yeah. Yeah. No problem. I will. But yeah, don't have any more questions. I really hope everyone checks out American Gothic, coming out October 27th. And um, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And like, yeah, when it was announced this summer, I was like, all right, I gotta pre-order this before it sells out. So, but yeah, I got it. Hopefully it comes in a few days.
yeah, I think it will, and I really hope you take it, man. Thank you for yeah, for just paying attention and supporting the band over all the years. And I really hope this one lands for you, because it's definitely one that we feel strongly about. So I really hope you dig it. And just thank you so much for taking the time and having me on, and I don't know, talking about all the stuff today. It's cool, and like I said, I appreciate what you're doing, and it's like it's very interesting to me
Yeah.
to get we talk to interviewers a lot from Europe and then from all over the US, but this is the first time I've done an interview with somebody on a reservation, and that's like I said, I've kind of seen the growing, mostly just through seeing more bands pop up, growing kind of output from metal in those communities. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and appreciate that you dig the music. And yeah, would love to come out and play sometime.
No problem. Yeah. Thank you again. All right. Here we go.